Greetings, decaying meat puppets. Do you ever wake up to find your workplace overrun with transparent, emotionally disoriented dead people in poorly fitted name tags? Because I do. Every blasted day. Let's begin with the obvious. Purgatory is backlogged. Again, and in their infinite wisdom. And by wisdom, I mean divine negligence dressed up in silk excuses. The pantheons have decided to redirect the spiritual overflow into my library, my sanctum, my cathedral of order and narrative integrity, now apparently serving as the cosmic overflow tank for every unresolved soul from every flailing afterlife management system in the multiverse. Yes, apparently we, and by we, I mean me, have become the Purgatory Overflow Department. Because nothing screams ideal resting place for confused ghosts, like a library that literally rearranges its shelves when you sneeze in metaphor. Do you know how many ghost interns decided last week was the perfect time for historical reenactment therapy? All of them. I'm now hosting a spectral LARP convention run entirely by delusional interns and dead empires. We had Norse berserker ghosts trying to reenact their final charge with Bjorn Ironside by raiding Croissant-chan's bakery at dawn and declaring the cinnamon rolls to be battle rations of the honored dead. A Babylonian phantasm began stacking every language dictionary into a spiraling tower in the linguistics wing, convinced he was rebuilding Babel to unify divine tongues. DEWEY knocked it over for violating fire codes. He declared it a holy test. And don't even get me started on the Zoroastrian librarian in training who tried to organize the Forbidden Scrolls chronologically, based on divine hotness. They wander the stacks. They phase through walls. They take naps in astral vents and whisper eldritch lullabies into the ears of unsuspecting eldritch patrons. And as for me, I did the only thing I could as an introverted eldritch god. I relocated my office to the vents. Yes, that's right. My magnificent multi-dimensional mahogany-drenched office, once a towering sanctum of cosmic order, is now located in the vents. Why? Well, like I said, because the interns have taken over the floors, the atriums, the narrative decks. One of them installed a fog machine in the folklore section. Another attempted to liberate all the tragic novels because she felt they deserved a second chance at happiness. I tried barricading myself in the administrative alcove. They phased through the walls. I tried hiding in the forbidden section. They held a seance there. For fun. So now I dwell above it all, suspended in HVAC liminality, a shadow in the ductwork, a bitter god sipping tea and monitoring spectral chaos from the crawl space like a disgruntled, omnipotent raccoon. I've installed a desk, 2 shelves, a ventilation altar, and a miniature espresso altar stolen from Croissant-chan's bakery. I command the library like a trapped war general yelling at ghosts from a metal rectangle. Do they hear me? Not at all. Do they listen? Also, not at all. But at least up here, no one tries to reenact the siege of Troy with historical fan fiction and paperbacks from the Romance Isle. And who, you may now be asking, gave them permission to wander to and fro so ghostly and freely? Who, pray tell, do you think allowed all of them to nap on the holographic reference spirals? Sleepnora. Sleepnora, our part-time ghost, part-time chaos intern, full-time nap ambassador, has taken it upon herself to make them feel welcome, which in her increasingly creative definition means strategically scattering beanbag chairs across the multiversal library, wings, and labeling every pocket dimension with signs like Snuggle Zone, Quiet Snoring Only, or Time Flow Paused, Naps Encouraged. Last Thursday, I found 5 Roman ghosts having a group dream in my existential filing cabinet. They were reenacting Caligula's orders to poke the ocean as a display of might against Poseidon. And what did Sleepnora say when I confronted her about this quagmire?
It's important to meet them where they are emotionally.
Where they are emotionally, Sleepnora, is literally the waiting room of metaphysical bureaucracy. This is not a narrative reclamation center. This is an afterlife bus stop with snacks and bad lighting. But oh no, it doesn't stop there. Apparently word has spread. Across pantheons, across death cults, across necromancer social networks. They're now referring to my library as the Cozy Transition Realm on Yelp, Y-E-L-P. There are reviews. 5 stars. Great nap zones, infinite tea, and a floaty girl with ghost ADHD who gave me a muffin made of moonlight. Would die again. Vishnu's intern number 7. 2 stars. Too many eldritch stares. One of the tentacles winked at me. Unsettling. A Sumerian shadow clerk. 4 stars. Don't understand anything here. Love that for me. Hades intern still haunting the romance section. Meanwhile, my eldritch patrons, actual credentialed, certified entities of unknowable power who signed real contracts and paid real soul power soul tax, are confused. They arrive expecting sacred tomes, dangerous relics, and maybe a friendly disembowelment from our cursed card catalog. Instead, they find spectral teenagers wearing Ask Me About My Death pins, lounging in hammocks made of dreams and anxiety. One particularly aggrieved war god asked for the restricted texts on tactical recursion. He was redirected by a ghost intern to a mindfulness coloring book and told to process his unresolved inner child. I had to personally drag him off the roof before he tried to declare a crusade against the Napwing. Do you know what it takes to de-escalate a wrath-based deity who's been emotionally invalidated by a 16-year-old from Valhalla named Sven? A bottle of existential mead and 3 hours of breathing exercises led by Croissant-chan's therapy muffins. Therapy muffins. The cinnamon ones hum Taylor Swift at 432 hertz. I tried to set boundaries. I issued decrees. I summoned the void to glare ominously. I reprogrammed the new arrival sign to say death is not enrollment. Nothing. Sleepnora just put googly eyes on it and added a plush couch beneath. She says it helps ghosts make friends with their mortality. I'm the only entity in this realm not napping. I'm writing this while floating above the atrium ceiling because there are now ghost bunk beds installed in my former office. They're color-coded by Death Decade. The 1400s kids keep singing madrigals. The 1980s ghosts will not stop performing interpretive angst. Madeline refuses to intervene. Says intern integration isn't an HR violation unless they achieve mass or flirt with the patrons. One of them tried to ghost date DEWEY. DEWEY now only responds in C++ haikus when that intern is present. Croissant-chan naturally encourages it. She made an afterlife welcome basket, filled with dream brioche and spectral emotion jams. One of the jams now whispers your childhood regrets if you spread it on toast. So the library is now haunted. Not in the cool way. Not in the poetic, the halls remember your name way. Nope. It's haunted in the startup internship way. Everything smells faintly of soul eucalyptus, and there are motivational posters that say things like, even the dead can glow up. And you know what the worst part is? I think they like it here. I think, somewhere deep down in their fragmented, translucent little minds, these wandering post-mortem fools have found meaning, comfort, The kind of ridiculous, non-traditional, deeply inconvenient emotional healing I never asked for. And maybe the library needs it. Maybe it's better to be a sanctuary than a sanctum. Maybe not every narrative needs to be catalogued. Maybe some stories want to rest, to breathe, to lie quietly next to other stories and hum until the void forgets their name. But that doesn't mean I like it. So for now I will remain in the ceiling vents, monitoring, brooding, occasionally dropping sarcastic notes onto beanbag clusters like, "This isn't an afterlife. This is a lo-fi playlist with delusions of grandeur." And that's when it hits me. Not a ghost intern, an actual plan, my revenge. When the gods finally realize they've sent too many interns and not enough structure. When the paperwork outweighs the pathos. When one of them finally emails me asking, "Is there a limit to how many ghosts you can host?" I will reply with one word: Zeus. Because if anyone's getting blamed for this, it's that metaphysical absentee dad of a thunder tosser. And, dear listener, I would like to preface this transmission by stating, formally on record and in 17 incompatible dialects of divine legalese, that this was not my fault. Technically, yes, I orchestrated it. Yes, I leveraged Voidmonger's dubious morality and a sentient void ferret named Chestopher, whose esophagus is an interdimensional black hole with white hole emissions. And yes, I may have calculated the ejection coordinates with mild, malicious intent, but it was the library's structural integrity I was protecting. Not that the Greek pantheon would care. No, they're too busy peeling ghost interns off their statues like haunted fruit roll-ups and demanding celestial compensation in the form of cursed olives. But I digress. Let me begin again where all good tragedies do, with an unmanageable pile of unpaid interns. Yes, we're once again turning our attention to Sleepnora. By this time, she had converted the entire index of forgotten manifestos into a nap fort. Interns were lounging across revolutionary pamphlets, like melancholic ghosts, at a beanbag conference. One spectral accountant from the Sumerian afterlife was softly sobbing into a treatise on dream-based communism. I tried to complain, but she was asleep inside a floating hammock, labeled "Don't Void My Vibe." Also, I was still technically in hiding. Anyway, I needed a solution. A final one, not in the dramatic universe-ending way. More in the passive-aggressive petty exile kind of way. So naturally I called Voidmonger. Voidmonger, if you're unfamiliar, is a cosmic entropy merchant with the sales ethics of a demonic used car dealer, and the enthusiasm of a Black Friday swarm, given sentience. He arrived 10 minutes late, 3 metaphors early, wearing sunglasses made of compressed regret, and chewing something that may have been the concept of late-stage capitalism.
What's the problem, Squid Bro?
He grinned, playfully juggling a small black hole with his hands. Don't call me that!
You're radiating managerial despair. I love it. What's clogging your archives today?
I showed him the nut fort. I showed him the Yelp reviews. I showed him the one ghost who had started offering unauthorized guided tours to tourists from the Taoist celestial bureaucracy.
So, basically, you've got spectral freeloaders colonizing your liminal architecture.
Yes.
Have you considered feeding them to a black hole?
Funny you should mention that. Enter Chestopher, Voidmonger's pet, employee, legal ward, I'm not sure. Chestopher is a small, vaguely mammalian voiding who eats everything, processes it through a singularity in his thorax, and ejects the remains via a white hole that spontaneously manifests somewhere else in the multiverse. I think it's the same one Frieren encountered on her journey, but that's another story. Anyway, Chestopher once ate an espresso machine and 37 IKEA pencils. 3 hours later, a minor storm god in another dimension was struck in the face by a caffeinated Allen wrench and converted to pacifism. Chestopher was already in the bakery, licking frosting off Paradox donuts. I called him over. "Chestopher," I said gently, "would you like to help me clean up?" He wagged. He licked Sleepnora's elbow. She slept through it. Voidmonger handed me a clipboard labeled Transdimensional Waiver of Digestive Ethics and said,
Just make sure he doesn't eat irony. It gives him hiccups.
The plan was simple. I'd create a low-attraction spiritual breadcrumb trail using leftover cinnamon despair muffins from Croissant-chan's last emotional breakdown. The ghosts, naturally curious, would follow the scent. Chestopher, stationed in the atrium, would politely open his cosmic esophagus and suck in the spectral traffic like a cheerful extra-dimensional Roomba. It worked far too well. One by one, the interns disappeared into the Chestopher vortex. There was no pain, just a soft whooshing noise and the gentle scent of old library card catalogs. Sleepnora awoke briefly, blinked, and mumbled,
They're going to a better beanbag.
before rolling over. And then, the white hole opened. We hadn't specified an ejection location. Chestopher operates on what Voidmonger calls chaotic karmic routing. It's a randomized spatial metaphysical system loosely based on mood, moon phases, and how recently you've eaten pickles. But this time, I had given him coordinates, and the white hole opened above Olympus. Yes, that Olympus. The one currently run by Zeus, whose idea of interdimensional diplomacy is yelling at clouds until they file restraining orders. Imagine, if you will, the serene arrogance of Mount Olympus, shining marble columns, over-polished egos, and dramatic music playing for no one. Now imagine that calm interrupted by a spectral rainstorm of unpaid interns. Ghosts of every theology began plummeting from the sky like divine spam. A Viking fell into Ares' hot tub. A Confucian scholar manifested inside Aphrodite's wine cellar. One unfortunate Celtic bard landed in Zeus's lap mid-monologue and immediately began critiquing his personal narrative arc. I watched from a scrying orb. I made popcorn. Voidmonger laughed so hard he swallowed a warranty. Naturally, I received a sternly worded lightning bolt from Zeus. Apparently, the ghost of a Mayan astrologer had begun haunting his sock drawer. Another was giving unsolicited afterlife counseling to Hera's peacocks. Dionysus, delighted, declared it the best party crasher event since Orpheus tried poetry, and offered to adopt 6 interns as wine critics. I refused to apologize. Zeus demanded retribution. I sent him a box labeled Athena's therapy files, confidential. It was just filled with blank paper and a muffin that whispers insecurities. So now Olympus is dealing with the spectral overflow, and the library is once again silent. Well, quiet enough. Sleepnora still hosts weekly nap meditations in the Dice and Dharma room, but at least now the only ghosts present are intentional. Chestopher has been rewarded with a belt made of pocket dimensions and a chew toy shaped like the Void. Voidmonger tried to sell me a subscription plan for intern disposal as a service. I told him to eat a paradox. And as for me, I nap in peace, in the ceiling, I can now make jokes about living in your walls as it was meant to be. And finally, I was able to drift into a very important nap and fulfill my date with REM, sleep. Or so I thought. And then I heard the sound, a ping. You'd think a ceiling vent nap, precisely calibrated for ambient humidity, distance from ghost lullabies, and optimal narrative apathy would prevent such an ungodly sound from reaching my divine form. But it did. Not a gentle ping either. Not a respectful buzz. Nope. This was a deity-level override ping, the kind reserved for cosmic emergencies, high crimes, or calls from someone too ancient to care about do not disturb settings. The name glowed across the screen. Hera. God Queen. Olympian matriarch. Divine enabler of the universe's worst husband. And perhaps more alarmingly, someone who had my private number. I answered because ignoring Hera is like ignoring gravity, or a flaming cease and desist from entropy itself.
Hello, Cthulhu,
She said, her voice perfectly calm, too calm. The voice of someone who has already filed the divine paperwork and is just waiting for you to sign your own damn warrant. Yes, Hera. Lovely to hear your voice. How's your emotionally unavailable celestial disappointment of a spouse?
Still scraping ghost interns off the columns.
I see my care package arrived.
That's why I'm calling.
Of course it is. Let's be clear. Hera never calls for pleasantries. She doesn't do casual. She doesn't small talk. Hera is the kind of being who files feelings under emotional accounting errors, and only opens up when a storm god has exploded something embarrassing. But today she had a tone.
I'm calling to ask, as a professional courtesy, why do you keep tormenting Zeus?
Ah, there it is. The question theologians have whispered for eons. Why does Cthulhu torment Zeus? Why this eternal, petty, metaphysical vendetta against the most notoriously thunderous of sky jocks? I could have given a complex answer about moral balance or narrative backlash. Instead, I said, because it brings me joy, and he deserves it. She sighed, the sigh of 1,000 dead therapists.
You've dropped spectral interns on him. You've rerouted divine mail to his temple full of unpaid prophecies. You summoned a dream made entirely of his worst parental failures and released it into his bathhouse.
Yes.
You turned his chariot into a fondue fountain. You wormholed a liquid form of Boreas, the god of the north wind, on his head like an ice bucket challenge. You hoard his paternity test results, which quite frankly has been the talk of Olympus for centuries.
Again, yes.
Do you understand how many divine complaint forms I have to file because of you?
Hera, I said gently, you married Zeus. Filing complaints is your eternal hobby. She exhaled in lowercase.
Look, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve it.
There it was, the pivot. The Queen's royal smirk disguised as diplomatic tone. She was giving me the space to admit what we both knew. That tormenting Zeus is not only justified, it is at this point a public service.
But you're not tired? Really? All this effort to humiliate one idiot storm god?
I paused, floating in my vent nest, surrounded by the muffled echo of spectral interns softly haunting a croissant oven. And I said, with the full weariness of a cosmic administrator who's filed one too many void 42B forms, not at all, because Zeus makes it easy. He is a walking overdue library fine with delusions of leadership. I heard Hera snort.
You know, I once caught him trying to rebrand infidelity as creative myth expansion.
Yes, and I put it on his business card.
You're going to keep doing it, aren't you?
Oh, Hera, I'm not doing anything. I'm simply allowing natural consequences to occur in humorous ways. To sloppily quote your Homer, I will be the fates when mistakes occur.
And you didn't by chance cause the spectral flash mob that materialized in his throne room yesterday and started singing its reigning gods?
I did not cause them. I merely suggested a chorus structure and provided mood lighting. She was silent for a moment. Then she said,
Just don't collapse Olympus again.
Not unless provoked. There's something almost comforting about these conversations with Hera. Two cosmic administrators, spiritually exhausted, emotionally scorched by centuries of myth, maintaining order through sarcasm and aggressive passive aggression. I respect her. Not because she's friendly. She isn't. But because she does her job. And because deep down, she loves watching Zeus get smacked by karmic pie.
You know,
She added,
if you ever want to escalate, I have notes.
Oh,
Let's just say I've got a list of pressure points. Narrative, marital, meteorological.
send them over for purely archival reasons. I am your Eldritch Bill Nye.
Of course.
She hung up. I lay back in the ceiling vent, satisfied. Below me, Sleepnora was sleep-floating while hugging a muffin. DEWEY emitted a contented philosophical chime. Somewhere Zeus screamed, "Who wrote this review?" as a Yelp notification rang in his temple. And I smiled. Because sometimes justice isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's petty. Sometimes it's Hera and I passive-aggressively co-managing divine consequence. And that, dear patrons of the library and loyal listeners of this ongoing cosmic tantrum, is how peace is maintained in the multiverse. Not by the Avengers, not by the American Constitution, but by my eldritch spite fueled by an endless buffet of croissants.